minutes. Good evening. I made it on. Oh, I'm feeling a little bit under the weather, but the show must go on, right? Let me change. I've got slow mode on, but probably 2 minutes is a little bit long. How do I change it? Where are we? Customization. Let's put 60 seconds. Give us. Hi, sir. Can you please help me? I'm really struggling. I've got my give us tips. Sure. I will be happy to give you tips and tricks very soon. So, guys, we're probably going to start about 7:15. I appreciate you're all sort of different time zones, but in about 10 minutes, I'll go through the stuff you need to know for tomorrow. Hey, Nick. Give us tips. Give you money. I don't have any money. I'm a poor teacher. Jeez. I'm glad someone finds me hilarious because my students definitely don't. More often than not, they kind of inwardly cringe when I don't know, tell my little dad jokes or just teach the way that I usually do. Thank you. I am a little bit under the weather. I think it's a combination of A, working too hard, and B, trying to... My year 11s are on study leave. Hi, by the way, if any of my year 11s are watching, I'm sure they will be watching. Trying to get them to the finish line. And although they're on study leave, there are many of them who like to disturb me during my free time, so, which is fine, by the way. We'll start in about 10 minutes, guys, so you can just chat amongst yourself. I'll just sip my coffee and read the comments. Finally, FLE coming to an end soon. Kiara, I'm also happy about that because, as you know, English is one of those GCSEs, unfortunately or fortunately, that stays with you forever. Applying for your first job. Oh, do you have your English and maths? Brilliant. Let's proceed with the interview phase. Should I revise tomorrow morning or would it be too much? I know I use the kind of like Crammers guide. It's used in a very sort of tongue-in-cheek, playful way. Do I think it's sensible to be cramming the morning of the exam? I don't know. I certainly didn't. I crammed the night before, certainly not the morning. Philip, I used to be. Gosh, I don't miss being a marker. It was interesting though, for my own professional development, but spending my summer break marking scripts, it was a lot. Hi, Mr. P. Should we have 5 points for each body paragraph? There's no rule of thumb. By 5 points, do you mean 5 ideas from each text A and text B? I tell my students to have 3, so 6 in total. I've heard that. I mean, I get my students to evaluate as much as possible, because that is essentially what you are being assessed on, right? I love you, Unc. I hate Vic. Oh, by the way, guys, because obviously 48 hours after the exam, teachers are gifted the exam paper. So I had a read of the paper 1 that you guys recently sat. If you sat the Vic paper, and my first thoughts were, it's quite a nice paper. I thought all the vocabulary type questions were very nice and, dare I say, quite easy. The summary question was very nice. I thought the theme, they're always themed, right? I thought buses was an interesting theme. The hoo-ha about the Vic situation, I probably need to plug in my charger at some point. I totally get it, because I read the story and I was like, where is Vic? Yeah, he literally is mentioned in one line. So thanks, Nick, by the way. We'll start shortly, guys. Just to sort of preface something before I start the video, there were a few inappropriate comments in the chat, and I appreciate some people like to come on here and be jokey, playful, whatever, but some students are on here to revise because they have a very important exam. So if you are on here to be a troll, essentially, you will be banned. And what was the orange juice? Oh, where's my I might need to go get my charger in a minute, guys. This is how prepared I am. I heard as well, guys, and again, I think Tortley has looked at patterns. To be honest, I've never looked at the directed writing task and then compared the ones to the extended writing response for paper 1. But what Tortley and other teachers believe, that if you've got a certain text type, so for the Vic paper, it was a letter. Apparently, it's not going to be a letter for the directed writing task. I don't know how true that is. I mean, it's only 3 text types that you need to know. So for me, it makes no sense to, sift through all the papers and to see these kind of patterns. It's 3 text types: letter, speech, and article. They're all fairly straightforward. So there you go, Eleanor. Bow down to Eleanor for doing God's work. I feel like it's going to be an article. I feel like article comes up quite frequently. Depending on the audience, it sounds quite similar to a speech more often than not. Was Vic a guy? His gender isn't mentioned, actually. You know, females can be carpenters. Maybe Vic is short for Victoria. Who knows? That is the question on everyone's lips. As why did the bus sink? I was looking at the memes on Reddit, and I was like, why? How did the bus sink? This is crazy. Oh God, it's tomorrow. Vic, the professional carpenter, ruined our grades. Who would ever think traveling a double-decker bus? Right, guys, I'm going to run down and get my charger, and then we'll start the lesson. So just give me 2 minutes. Just 1 second, guys. I'm just okay. Okay, I'm charged. I'm almost ready to go. I had a very quick moment of panic because I think I left my charger at work, but I had a spare one, which potentially could electrocute me if I touched the wrong point. Guys, it did say, question 3, paper 1, it did say you are Vic at the top, but you are Vic. Not Sarah. You're not John. You're not Robin. If you know, you know. A lot of people did write as Roger, and I get that. Okay, guys, let's start. I'm going to share my screen. So the first part of the kind of lesson is going to look at directed writing, which in my opinion is probably the hardest question out of them all. And that includes paper 1 and paper 2. And lots of students go in there with a really sort of shaky sort of understanding or approach to how to actually evaluate ideas. Okay, there is some similarities to question 3 paper 1, but actually the skills are very, very different. Right, let me see if I can share my screen. I would advise you guys, if you're watching, just grab a notebook and a pen so you can jot down some notes. Okay, so I feel like I should do my little intro. I'm not going to do it. Should I do it? Hey, what's up, guys? No, I'm not going to do it. Right, directed writing and composition, paper 2. That's what you're all here for, because it's tomorrow. So fingers crossed you're all going to do amazingly and you all know how to approach the paper. This is 50% of the grade. I imagine everyone here is doing the paper 2 and not the coursework component. So let's start having a look at the, I guess, the nuts and bolts. Okay, there's stuff that really you should know already, but if you don't know, let's quickly go over them. So a question I get time and time again, and it worries me. When you are sitting the exam tomorrow, I get comments on my YouTube videos. What's the format for a journal, or what's the format for a formal report? There are only the 3 prescribed text types that you need to know. And if you did enough revision for paper 1 question 3, you probably don't need to look at the sort of generic features or anything like that. Okay, so the 3 that you need to know, because you will be asked to write in one of these forms, are speech, letter, and article. May well be a formal letter, it may well be an informal letter. Sir, the screen is blurry. Can you read it? Is it readable at least? You spend 1 hour on this question. Potentially you can sacrifice, if you've not finished within the 1 hour, potentially you can steal 10 minutes from the sort of composition section. I think you can do a decent description, a decent narrative in 40 minutes, 50 minutes, okay, depending on how quickly you can write, okay? But you must get the directed writing question finished, okay? If it's not finished within that sort of hour, I would think about maybe stealing maybe sort of 10 minutes. So use your time wisely. First thing you need to do, which is a similarity with question 3, paper 1, and you can write this somewhere on the paper, work out the TAP. You remember the acronym TAP? Tap on the task, okay? Tap on the task, okay? What text type is it? Fingers crossed there's no confusion, because it says it at the top, it's in bold. Who are you writing for? And what is the purpose? Okay. Why are you writing the piece? Okay. Is it, obviously it's going to be, there's going to be an element of evaluation, but is it to inform? Is it to persuade, to argue, etc., etc.? Make sure your writing is tailored to the audience and purpose. I'm going to talk about audience, I think, on the next slide, okay? Fingers crossed you get a younger demographic, okay? If you are writing a speech article for students, young people, that is great, okay? Pray to God. thank him for the blessings, okay? Because that means that you can be a bit more creative. You can be a bit more playful with your language, okay? You can use idioms, hyperbole, exaggeration, subtle sarcasm, okay? You can talk about memes, whatever, within reason, okay? Again, more on this later. In the chat, a yes or no, okay? If I was to say to you, and I said to one of my students, he might be watching, I'm not going to name him. I said something along the lines of, are you ready to assimilate the ideas tomorrow? And he kind of gave me this blank look. Do we know what it means to assimilate ideas? Give me a yes or a no in the chat box. We've got some yeses. We've got a lot of no's. Okay, we've got a lot of no's. Okay, so there are sort of two key reading skills, okay, that you need to show. The ability to assimilate ideas from both texts so that they become your own thoughts, okay? And the ability to evaluate a range of ideas or opinions from both texts. Both are very, very different skills. Thanks, Ginger. I bet you're glad it's over now for you. I've just got this week. They've had their poetry. They've got one more literature, but they've got FLE paper 2, and then they've got quite a big literature exam for world literature anyway. Lots of my students, it's funny actually, they pull up his Ginger's YouTube. Anyway, so we assimilate ideas, we evaluate ideas, okay? And we use what I refer to, you might want to write this down, the PNS method, okay? What does successful evaluation look like? It's not just agreeing with everything. Cambridge does not want to see that. Cambridge wants to see an element of probing. Hang on, you think this, but is that the right way of thinking? Okay, have you thought about this? They want to see you probe, disagree, but also effective evaluation offers solutions. You can't just say this is a load of rubbish, okay? This is a load of rubbish. Have you thought about this? Okay, and you know, what can we do to tackle this problem? So PNS, positive, negative solutions. Doesn't need to be for every explicit idea. Okay, right, I'm moving on. So some of you might have done this question. So question 1, this is just to show you what, I'm sure you all know what a directed writing question looks like. So the format will be at the top, the text type will be at the top. So write a magazine article for young people with the title. Look, Cambridge has even given you a catchy title, bit of alliteration there, so you don't have to do too much thinking about that or wasting time. And in your article, you should evaluate the views, attitudes, opinions given in both texts. That is the sort of standard wording for bullet point 1. Bullet point 1, guys, bullet point 1, that is where your evaluation goes. That is where your assimilation goes. You don't evaluate for bullet point 2. So all of those quite difficult reading skills, which you are being asked to show, bullet point 1. So bullet point 2 is where you give your own views. Okay, you might use the text to form some sort of suitable inferences, but this is where Cambridge is inviting you to give your own views based on what you have read. Okay, so this is, and I'm going to stress this, okay, there is no rule book. There is no official rule book to say you have to approach this question in this particular way. Okay, you search directed writing in YouTube. Okay, every teacher teaches this question in completely different ways, and that's absolutely fine, because at the core of their teaching is selecting a range of ideas and evaluating them effectively. Whatever that looks like, or however you approach that, that's absolutely fine. I'm not asking you to necessarily change your approach, or I'm not necessarily saying this is the only approach that works. I'm just showing you what I teach my year 11s, and the approach that I have taught for God knows how many years. And this doesn't confuse them. Okay. So you work out the tap. Obviously, it's an article. So you need to start thinking, okay, what are the generic features? Well, given that the audience are young people, it should sound quite chatty. It might sound very similar to a speech. Okay. You'll have a catchy title. Thank you, Cambridge, again. Music matters. A question that I often get is, do I need by the way, I do think it's going to be an article tomorrow, not necessarily for all time zones. Yeah. If I teach you, if you're in the same time, I just think it's going to be an article. Are subheadings needed? Not necessarily. I would say a catchy title is needed. Subheadings, though, are a nice touch. And I do think Cambridge appreciates them if they are sort of well constructed. You know, rhetorical questions work well, and subheadings really just help it easy to sort of navigate the page for the reader. Okay. So once you've worked out the tap, the audience, especially young people, that means, just to echo what I said before, you can be a bit more playful with your language, a bit more creative, you know, funny, make Cambridge laugh. They love it. Trust me, I was a marker once upon a time, and I'm going to get onto the narrative writing a little bit later on, and the whole doom and gloom type of narrative I had to wade through, but that's a little bit later on. Okay. But always aim for, in the same breath, always aim for standard English. You need to show off your English skills. Okay. And the purpose, okay, if we have a little read here, write a magazine article for young people, evaluate, give your blah, 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 about the best ways to inspire. That verb inspire is obviously telling you, or should be telling you, there's going to be an element of informing them why music is important, and there's going to be an element of persuasion, maybe an element of entertainment as well, and of course, evaluate. That is a key skill. You cannot get away from evaluating ideas. Sir, please say hi. So I'm going through the lesson. I'm not necessarily reading all of the comments. Okay, I think we get that. Takeaway message, guys, work out the tap. Make sure that your language, style, everything, tone, register is appropriate for the audience. Right. Do I need an opening? Letter, yes. Article, yes. Speech, yes. Would you deliver a speech without some sort of context or introduction? This is what I'm going to be talking about. This is the subject matter. No, you wouldn't. It'd be too abrupt, okay? So your opening, okay, is to show an awareness to Cambridge. I know what I'm writing, what text type, and I'm gearing my writing, or I'm tailoring my writing, my language, all of my features towards the audience. Okay. So this is an example of probably what I would write if I was doing this task. Okay. I'm sure you can all relate, you know, primary school, being forced to play the recorder. It sounds a little bit like a speech. Okay. So let's imagine music matters is at the top. If you've ever suffered through a squeaky recorder lesson or battled with piano scales as a kid, you, that pronoun you, I'm speaking to the reader. You might think that music just isn't your thing, but hear me out. For young people, music is more than just noise you make to annoy your siblings. It's creativity, it's confidence, it's connection, and yes, sometimes chaos. From power chords in your bedroom to public performances on stage, Music has the power to shape lives in ways you might not expect. Want to find out more? And this is kind of like my generic phrase if it's an article. Some of you might see it's a bit cheesy. Usually it's like, don't you dare turn the page. Good, but don't say I didn't warn you. Don't turn the page, or grab a snack, something like that. Yes, whatever text type, your first paragraph, forget the bullet points. Read the text, read the task, and then do a little introduction to show an awareness of audience and purpose. Okay, you will get writing marks straight away. This is predominantly a writing assessment. Okay, paper 1 question 3, predominantly a reading question. Sir, your British accent. No, your introduction, guys, don't use any sort of reading skills, okay? Just speak to the reader, speak to the audience, but obviously it needs to be about the subject matter. Okay, let's move on. Introduction, make sure you hook the reader, the audience. Okay. This is sort of like the bane of my life. If you don't understand this, guys, I'm sorry to be negative, but you're going to be doomed tomorrow. So please do get some of this information down. So admittedly, okay, sometimes I do use these interchangeably, okay, but they are quite different. For paper 1 question 3, you are required to reword explicit. Don't scare us. Sorry, I'm joking. You're going to be fine. For question 3, paper 1, you are required to reword explicit ideas. For this, okay, for directed writing, you are required to, the verb is to assimilate arguments, okay, so that they become your own thoughts. Okay, so it's a little bit more than just rewording. And I've just put there, if you wanted to bullet point or get this definition down. So rewording, again, going back to question 3, paper 1, it's about swapping words, it's about paraphrasing, but you're still very much relying on most of the words within that sentence. You're swapping out a few adjectives, whatever. Assimilating means that you understand the arguments, but this is key, they become part of your own argument, okay? And it's a bit about reshaping or manipulating them so it fits your piece. If that's, again, it's very abstract to you, I will show you what that looks like very, very soon. Thanks, Nick. Okay, so let's go on to what that kind of looks like, because I appreciate it's probably very abstract. First, let's look at sort of evaluating. Okay, this is the key reading skill that you are ultimately being assessed on. Okay, what does it mean to evaluate? What it means to engage critically with the ideas. It's weighing them up. It's not just saying, yeah, I agree with you or I disagree with you. Okay, effective evaluation, depending on the argument, is about presenting a sort of balanced view and then coming back to what you think. Okay, I'm sure you've evaluated something before. These are the positives, these are the negatives, but actually if we think about the bigger picture, this is probably the best course of action. Okay, again, I'll show you what that looks like. Also, you might want to print screen this slide. So another question I get asked is, how do I signpost evaluation for sort of informal text types? So for more formal text types, you might just use, on the other hand, however, blah, 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 blah. But these are some more colloquial phrases which show Cambridge you are about to evaluate. Okay, to be fair, that's not a bad point. It sounds good on paper, but It's a valid point, but here's the problem. So yeah, you can come back and watch this video, but I just need to sort of whiz through it. So what does it look like in practice? How do we assimilate ideas into our own thoughts, and how do we evaluate? Okay, so let's imagine this is completely sort of made up, okay, but let's just imagine this is the opening of a text A, because I don't really have time, unfortunately, to do a full paper. Watch my video on paper 2, the most recently uploaded one, if you want to see that. Let's imagine I pulled this from text A, okay, and it's a letter, okay. I think, did I put let me have a look. Okay, let me get rid of that. I don't need that. Okay, that's better. So let's imagine this is from text A. An angry mother has written into a newspaper column about teenagers being lazy. None of you are lazy. You're on this chat the day before your exam. Your task is to write a speech about the struggles of being young. Okay, or I think I changed it into an article in the end. Speech or article, whatever. Okay, so this is the short bit from text A. Again, I've completely made it up. So this is the angry mother. As a mother of 2 teenagers, I'm frankly tired of the endless excuses. I'm tired. I'll do it later. I forgot. It's a constant loop of avoidance. This generation has more convenience at their fingertips than ever before, yet somehow they struggle to get off the sofa and put a plate in the dishwasher. We've raised a cohort of screen addicted procrastinators who think basic responsibilities are optional. Where's the work ethic? Sounds a bit like my mum. I'd say sorry, but I know my mum. I don't even know my mum. I think I mentioned it once. Again, I've just made this up, guys. Imagine it comes from paragraph 1, text A. Some really powerful opinions, whether we agree or disagree. There's lots of meat on the bone. Okay, so okay, so I did. Okay, I understand. I've done like a speech and an article. So, oh, full screen. I've worked out how to do full screen. Is that better, guys? Awesome. So once you've read text A and text B, it's your job to identify some powerful arguments to assimilate them into your own thoughts, your own words, your own piece. Okay. For my students, again, your English teachers may well have taught you a different approach, and that's absolutely okay. There's no, you need to include this many ideas. For my students, I say highlight 3 things, 3 meaty things, 3. Can I move the camera? How do I move the camera? How do I move the camera? Right, I might need to go back to. Okay, I'm not looking at the screen, guys, so hopefully this is a little bit better. So your job is to highlight 3 meaty things from text A, 3 meaty things from text B, okay? Sometimes text A, text B, one's completely in agreement of something, and text B is a little bit more scathing and critical, okay? So bear that in mind. Sometimes the arguments are quite similar. 3 meaty things. You might agree, you might disagree. Okay. PNS, positive, negative solutions, okay? The first thing that I want to question is this mother's opinion that She believed that students are almost hardwired to make excuses. Okay, I'm tired, I'll do it later, I forgot. But hang on, guys, you are all here. Okay, you've got to, this isn't laziness. Okay, so this is my opening. Okay, I'm honestly sick and tired of students being given a bad rep. Do people really think it's easy to navigate this crazy world right now? Adults love to claim. The first bit is kind of like my filler voice. Okay, to show I'm really passionate about this. Okay, adults love to claim that we are just hardwired to make excuses and dodge responsibility. Okay, that is the idea in a nutshell. So, what I've highlighted on the left in yellow, I've assimilated that into my own thoughts. Okay, I'm not saying, and some students do this for whatever reason, text A says this and text B says that. No, do not do that. Okay, they become a part of your piece. Okay, green is your positive, okay, or acknowledging their argument. Sure, I've got friends who'd rather crash on the couch and binge Netflix and do homework. Who doesn't? But to say that's the whole picture, that couldn't be further from the truth. We are juggling school, social pressure, future plans, mental health, and still expected to perform at our best. If anything, we're working harder than ever, just in ways that often go unseen. Explicit idea. I've assimilated one idea. Okay. I've acknowledged it, but hang on, I do not agree with you. And this is why. Okay. In keeping with the task, okay, it has a clear voice, it's authentic, lots of different writing techniques. Okay. Now I'm going to go back to the. Does that kind of make sense, that process, guys? Let me show you another example from this. Okay, another argument. Apologies, I'm not looking. This is the only way, I think, without my sort of camera blocking the text, so I can't actually see the chat. Um, Another thing the mother says is that we've raised a cohort of screen addicted procrastinators. Okay. This time it's an article. Okay. Again, articles and speeches in terms of sort of voice, they'll probably sound quite similar. Okay. Depending on the audience and purpose. And sure, being hooked on our devices and procrastination are real. Okay, so I've assimilated my second idea into my own thoughts, my own argument. No one's denying that. That's just a subtle nod. Okay, I get you. I get you. Okay. I've got friends who spend, hours and hours scrolling through memes and TikToks and God knows what. I get you. I hear you. But let's not pretend it's just teenagers. I've seen adults scroll. This is where your own ideas come into play, guys. I've seen adults scroll TikTok for an hour, then complain they don't have time to cook dinner. We are living in a world designed to distract everyone, not just us. Notification, endless feeds, constant updates. It's not a teenage problem. It's a human one. The difference is when we do it, we are quote unquote lazy. When adults do it, they are quote unquote just unwinding. Funny how that works, right? And then what I've added, guys, and again, you don't necessarily need to offer solutions for everything, but I've offered a solution. Okay. Have you thought about thinking, this way? Maybe instead of pointing fingers, we all need to learn how to manage screen time better. Start small, set boundaries, and hold each other accountable. So here we've got the assimilated idea, positive, negative, and a solution, the PNS method on the chat. You do not need 15 points. The PNS method, it depends, okay? It depends what the arguments are in the text, basically, and what your feelings are. But if you are disagreeing, your evaluation needs to be thoughtful and purposeful. Don't just disagree for the sake of it. Don't just agree for the sake of it. Okay. I would aim for a balanced argument, positive, negative, and offer solutions. Exactly. Exactly. What I would do, if this question is particularly difficult for you, I would play it safe. I say play it safe. This is how I teach my students. I would just bullet point one, where you have to evaluate. Your first meaty paragraph is just going to focus on text A. You highlight 3 ideas. Your paragraph after that, your third paragraph, okay, because you've got the introduction as well, that is going to focus on text B. There is no need to sort of compare the two necessarily. You are evaluating ideas. Okay, that is the key skill. It doesn't matter how you organize it, but that would be a safe bet if this question is causing some confusion. So how do I? So again, if you're new to the video, guys, this is the structure that I would go with. Paragraph 1, introduction. Paragraph 2, bullet point 1, focus on text A, 3 ideas. Assimilate the first idea into your own thoughts, your own words, evaluate. What that evaluation looks like, it depends on the argument, okay? You might strongly disagree with it. Explain why. Offer solutions. Okay. This is abhorrent. This is wrong on so many levels. We need to be thinking about X, Y, and Z. Okay. Don't, in the same breath, do not just agree with everything. That is not effective evaluation. Okay. We need some agreement. We need some disagreement, and offer some solutions as well. Just a couple. If you're saying this is abhorrent, this is awful, okay, what should be done about it? As a collective, we need to work together to change things as an imperative. Okay, so text A and text B, I would completely separate. Okay, so don't merge the two. And then bullet point 2, sorry, that's meant to, that's supposed to say bullet, might cause some confusion. There we go. So paragraph 4 is bullet point 2, where you give your own views. Okay. Thank you, Tort. So let me just answer some questions about directed. We're just going to have a sort of 5-minute break. Well, I'm going to have a 5-minute break. There's 300 people on here. I'm a little bit parched. And then we're going to go on to narrative. Guys, if you need further guidance, watch my most recent directed writing video. Someone asked me, can I do a paper? I don't have time to do a paper. Okay. There is a video going through an actual past paper on my YouTube channel. Please watch it. What is the significance of 15 marks? Teachers, there are a lot of teachers who believe, and this is true for the summary, extended writing, that you get a point. If it's 15 reading marks, that means you need to include 15 things. That is not true, and it's never been true. Okay. To get a top band response or a decent, you need a range. Okay. A range does not necessarily mean 15. You do not need 1 point. That would be 15 explicit ideas assimilated into your own thoughts, and then lots of evaluation. That is I wouldn't be able to do that. That's crazy. That is crazy. Tortley is amazing. Ginger, do you know who else is an amazing I'm sure she's an amazing teacher. She's an amazing YouTuber as well. Miss Duckworth's classroom, Schofield Shakespeare. Do we have to apply the PNS for each point? Not necessarily. It depends on the argument and what you have to say. I would say where possible, start with a balanced argument. Yeah, I hear you. Even if it's a subtle nod. Yeah, I kind of understand you. However, have you thought about this? Okay. Always bring it back to what you're trying to say, what your argument is. Yeah, exactly. You don't always have to give a solution, guys. And by solution, I mean a very, very concise sentence. Okay. Maybe we need to work together to change this ASAP. That's a solution. The solution is that we all need to work together. Because actually, lots of solutions usually is bullet point 2, where you have to give your own ideas, right? But if you're disagreeing, if you're saying this is absolutely wrong on so many levels, well, why? You know, what needs to be done about it? My major committee in Parrot, we have to evaluate text A, so that just mean we should also disagree with the point. It depends, guys. This is it's very difficult for me to answer these type of questions because it depends on the text. Okay. If you get, for example, this made up text that I wrote, okay, a mother says that students are just inherently lazy, okay, it's up to you. Like, how are you going to approach that? Are you going to completely disagree with her? Are you going to agree? Are you going to sit somewhere in the middle? It really depends. Okay, there's not an exact rule of thumb, or you need to agree to this amount of points and disagree. Okay, you are evaluating a range of ideas. Okay, quite often the texts are similar. Yes, Cambridge want taught content. Cambridge want a strong voice. If you disagree, you know, almost, even though you're kind of writing as yourself, guys, you're not assuming the rule. I would, you know, if you're passionate about a subject, okay, depending on what the task is, think about how you're going to convey that passion or that disappointment with certain ideas being expressed. Do we all always need to be balanced? Not necessarily. It depends on the texts. Some things, you know, it's difficult as human beings to provide a balanced argument if we're particularly passionate about something. Right. Let's talk about, and I haven't actually got any notes, so I'm going to do this real time. I want to talk, I've got about 30 minutes left. I want to talk about narrative. I want to talk about the composition section. Okay. And I want to talk about some sort of do's and don'ts, I guess. So in about 3 minutes, guys, I'm going to talk you through some do's and don'ts. I'm going to share a piece that I wrote a long time ago, about 2 years ago. I'll share a descriptive piece, and I will share a narrative as well. So I will be back in 2 minutes. Okay. One more thing, because someone's just said that contentious issue, which really makes my foot itch. Suggested word counts. If anything, and please do, a legend that is really underrated on YouTube. He's been doing this gig for a very long time. Schofield Shakespeare. I bow down to him. He did a video on this particular question before it kind of changed the format and everything. It was slightly easier. He said, if there's any question you want to go over the suggested word count, it's a directed writing. Most of you, if you are spending 1 hour, should be writing 2.5 pages. I don't know. I have a student. She might be watching. She's very quick at writing. I'm very envious. She did her social world literature, unseen poetry, 1 hour, 15 minutes. She managed to write 2.5, 3 pages for each essay, 6 pages in 1.5. It's just crazy. Providing your piece is focus, okay? Go over the word count. When I was a marker, it gets scanned right. The examiner has to read every single word. Even if you go significantly over, you are not going to be penalized. If anything, for this question, I implore you, I encourage you to go out there. I've said it. I encourage you to go over the word count. I'm not saying more is better. Absolutely, I'm not saying that. You can definitely get a top band, sticking to that word count. If you look at, maybe Cambridge has shown you, Cambridge, your teachers have shown you official exemplars which get released from all of the ones that get the top band, they're always over the word count, always. So I used to be. So in an hour, and again, you're able to write at a decent speed. I reckon for directed writing, 2.5 to 3 pages. And I have students who will write more than that, probably 4 pages plus, because they're just crazy. I think 6 pages for descriptive writing is a little bit too long. Sorry, I'm still talking about directed writing. Okay, right. So let's talk about the composition section. So I will show you this shortly. Let's talk again. I've not pre-written any notes. Let's talk about narratives. What is Cambridge looking for? Now, hopefully, no more sort of directed writing talk, guys. Let's sort of move on. Oh, why is it still? I know what I need to do. Okay. Sometimes, and some of you will be amazing with creative prose. So you will sit down tomorrow, you'll open up the paper, and you will be driven by the prompt. Others will be more confident writing short stories. Some might be more confident writing a description. Okay. There are teachers who say to their lovely little classes, do the narrative, always do the narrative, or always do the description. Okay. It's not my place necessarily to say, first of all, one isn't easier than the other. One isn't easier than the other. I would say if I'm taking a sort of step back and thinking what I would do, I would probably do the description, but it depends on the prompt. Okay. Sometimes the prompts are absolutely naff. Who wants to describe a watch? Who wants to describe a wardrobe or anything static? Believe it or not, I think one prompt from last year, guys, was to describe a watch. Describe a watch. Crazy. It really depends on your skills, guys. Okay. Depends on your skills. Okay. But hopefully you should be by now have a kind of idea as to which one you are sort of going to lean towards. But again, you might be driven completely by the prompt, and that's absolutely okay. Right. Narratives. The most important thing, and what Cambridge is looking for, I think anyway, is obviously something with, a clear plot, beginning, middle, and end, but they're really looking at a student's ability to craft something which is accurate. Okay. If your tenses are all over the place, if you are comma splicing left, right, and center, if you cannot use capital letters, full stops, God forbid, if you cannot paragraph, that is really going to affect your mark. I know this is a really sort of boring opening, but accuracy, you get more marks for style and accuracy than you do for the content. Okay. That's why it's really important to proofread. I'm just going to type some stuff, guys. You might want to get this down. They want to see, I'm sure you've heard of story mountain or narrative arc. There needs to be a narrative arc. Okay. You only have an hour. So there needs to be a clear beginning, which is your exposition, which is usually about the setting or establishing a sense of character. They want, the middle, something needs to happen. So the climax, something needs to happen. I've lost count of how many stories I've read. You know, they go on and on and on and on. And I was like, what actually happens? Okay. And there needs to be a clear end. Do loose ends need to be tied up? Absolutely. They don't. Okay. If you've watched any of my what you got YouTube shorts, I made this video a couple years ago, I think during COVID. Please, guys, please do not end with "and I woke up and it was a dream." Even if you are running out of time, please don't do it. Okay. These are some sort of non-negotiables, okay? They obviously want to see some features of narrative writing. They obviously want to see some features of narrative writing. So, characterization. How you construct characters through their physical description, their speech, where they live, etc., their relationships with other people, and a little bit of dialogue. If you are going to include dialogue, and I recommend that you do because it's another way to create authentic characters, please go onto BBC Bitesize, go onto some sort of grammar website that details how to punctuate dialogue accurately, because that will have a negative impact on your grade for sure. In the same breath, okay, and just to stress that, a bit of dialogue to show Cambridge that you can characterize through what they're saying, you need to think about the words that are leaving the character's mouth. For example, and I'm pretty sure I said this to my year 11s, if your dialogue is something along the lines of, "Hi, Sarah, I had a really boring weekend. I stayed in watching Netflix." Oh, that sounds really boring. Do you want to catch up next week? What is that doing to create any type of authentic character? It's rubbish. If your dialogue isn't interesting, just don't include it. It's a waste of time. Characters. Yes, you can write. Yes, you can do a first person, just have the narrator's voice throughout the whole piece. Okay. I would recommend no more. Okay, I love Seb. He's such a cute and funny guy. Don't sleep on him. I would have no more than 3 characters. 2 ideally. Going back to dialogue. If when you finish your dialogue, you look at your page and it is just a page of speech, you pray to God. Pray for forgiveness because something has gone wrong, okay? You need a peppering of speech. A peppering. Not too much. Don't go crazy with the speech, okay? Just a little bit. Pepper it throughout, okay? When you see, I know now I'm not removing slow-mo. Gosh, it goes crazy. Setting. Now, even if you're doing narrative, there is going to be some description of sorts, okay? If you don't describe anything, if you don't describe the characters, don't describe the setting, it's going to be a very dull narrative, okay? Most of you, if you just decide to do the narrative, your exposition will start with some sort of description. You might describe the weather, describe the setting, describe the characters, whatever. Okay? Exposition, your beginning. Okay? Establish a sense of character, establish a sense of setting. Okay? And whatever subject matter, gosh, I'm going to rant. You know what's coming about choosing a suitable topic. Whatever topic you do, even if it's a more light-hearted narrative, there needs to be, you know, some build-up of tension. Doesn't need to be like serious doom and gloom, okay? It's coming. You know what's coming. every single year, after every time kids sit their exams, okay, Cambridge compile, you might have seen one, quite useful. They compile and examine a report, okay, and they detail the things that kids did well, what they need to work on, blah blah. It's mainly for teachers, okay. Every year when they write about narratives, anything to do with the narrative, they always say the better responses are students who write from personal experience. And by that, I do not necessarily mean you have to have gone through whatever it is you're writing about, but you need to be able to relate to it. Okay, it needs to sound authentic. Please, 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 please. And again, having been an examiner myself, I would say, and this is quite a shocking statistic, every year I did it for 2 years, okay, I would say 60 to 70% of the narratives were doom and gloom and left me feeling rather depressed, okay. And I wouldn't mind if they were, decently crafted narratives, but some of them were just crazy. They verged on or bordered on the ridiculous. They were so unbelievable, okay. You want something that's credible. So here's my list. It's not an exhaustive list, okay? Do not write about anything to do with the supernatural. Avoid murder mysteries. Avoid death. Avoid unaliving oneself, okay? Avoid teenage pregnancy. Avoid football narratives. Avoid any type of apocalypse, end of the world, anything with zombies. Avoid witches. You see where I'm going, okay? Any type of horror type narratives, just don't do them. War narratives, again, sometimes I've marked a really, really successful war narrative before. Why are Cambridge doing that? Why am I giving you this advice? Why did Cambridge give this advice every single year? This is not just, yes, I agree with Cambridge. It's because you only have 1 hour. If you're planning, you have about 40 to 50 minutes to craft a short story. It is not enough time to develop the characters, develop the plot for it to be believable. Again, I don't know if she's here. I said to one of my students, so when I was marking, I've marked literature, paper 1, paper 2. Bearing in mind, we have to mark hundreds of scripts. So sometimes I'm wading through on my computer, let's say 200 narratives, okay? I'm very tired. I'm drinking copious amounts of coffee. I'm thinking about the big paycheck that I'm going to get once I finish. And of course, for my own professional development. Oh, gosh. Suicide, death, there's a pool of blood, someone's just been shot, a zombie's just taken a chunk out of his neck. It's it doesn't they never pricked or widened my eyes or pricked my ears up or anything like that. It did nothing to my senses other than make me quite sleepy. Again, this isn't my opinion, guys. This is an opinion that is shared by lots of teachers and the advice that Cambridge gives every single year. What I would say is you want to, and it does matter, you want to stand out from the rest because we literally have to mark hundreds of scripts, okay? So I think sometimes going with something which is slightly hyperbolic, dare I say it, slightly humorous, tongue-in-cheek is the way to go. But that's just my opinion, okay? What Cambridge do say, and going back to personal experience, yes, you can embellish. Yes, you can use what we say a bit of poetic license. So think about something that you personally experienced it and make it a little bit more exciting. I like romantic comedy works. But generally, love stories can be quite, dare I say it, boring. No dystopia, no end of the world narratives. Yes, exactly. That there's a perfect summary, guys. Again, I've said this in one of my videos. This is not me to curb your, you know, I love dystopian literature. 1984 Orwell, it's my favorite novel. Dystopian literature is my thing. I love it. I consume it. When I was younger, I loved, I love horror as a genre. I love all of them, okay? When I was younger, I loved writing doom and gloom narratives, but it's just, you just don't have enough time. As simple as that. Right, I'm moving on because I knew I'd just I could keep going. Right from personal experience. Oh, let's time. Okay, let's talk about vocabulary choices. Lots of students think that if, and this is certainly true for descriptive writing, these really overly complicated, almost convoluted sounding words that they found the longest word in a thesaurus or dictionary. I'm going to use that, or I'm going to use the first complicated sounding word that that comes up at the top of Google. But words change depending on the context. So, for example, if you typed in hot, you'll get a bunch of synonyms for hot, right? And not all of them would be appropriate for writing about the temperature. Okay. Cambridge use the adjective precise vocabulary choices. That does not mean necessarily these complicated sounding words. Okay. Instead of walked, you might use shuffled, for example. Okay. It's about thinking about your verb choices, your adjective choices, and thinking, does this create a sense of character? Is this evoking a particular sense of emotion? Okay. So think carefully about your vocabulary choices, and are they precise enough to create a certain effect, I guess. Vocabulary is important. Sentence structure. And this sort of also links to sentence lengths. Okay. So hopefully now you have a firm grasp of simple, compound, and complex sentences. You need to use a range of sentences. Sentences, it's a bit like a balancing act. Obviously, they glue everything together. Okay. If you use too many complex sentences, okay, the effect is going to be lost. If you're trying to create tension and you're thinking, gosh, do you know what, I'm going to use lots of short sentences, dare I say, I'm going to throw in a few sentence fragments. Okay. If there's lots of simple sentence, short sentences, some sentence fragments, it's going to be really choppy. If you use too many of them, that effect of trying to build tension is going to be lost. It's a bit of a balancing act. You use a couple of short ones, you use a couple of long ones. Okay. Sentence starters. It is absolutely, dear. Yes, that's absolutely okay. Sentence starters. It is absolutely okay to start your sentences. This is what I'm like all the time. It might be to do with the coffee. It's okay to start your sentences with I if you're doing the first person narrative. That's absolutely okay. But obviously, if you are starting every sentence with that first person pronoun I, that's not going to demonstrate that you have this sort of firm grasp of how sentences work and how we can use different sentence starters for effect. Okay. There are lots of different ways to vary your sentences. Okay. You can start with an adverb. You can start with an adjective. You can start with two adjectives. I don't know. For example, gingerly he walked towards the exam hall. Horrified, they didn't know what to do. Okay, the list goes on. Again, it's a balancing act. If you use lots of adverb sentence starters, that effect is going to be lost. Punctuation. Okay, I wish I had more time to go through different. There is a video. Okay, punctuation is, in my opinion, just as useful as vocabulary, just as useful as sentence structure for creating impact. There is a video on my channel which breaks down semicolons, colons, dashes. If you're, again, looking to sort of elevate your style and accuracy marks, I would check out that video. But I do want to briefly go over semicolons and sort of comma splicing. Okay, in the chat box, give me a yes if you know what a comma splice is. Give me a no if you've never heard of it. Okay, good. The reason why I just want to briefly go over semicolons or colons, because I would say that commas, out of all the beautiful piece of punctuation, I'm not saying commas have a purpose as well. Commas are probably the piece of punctuation that is used most inaccurately. Okay, because in primary school, for reasons unbeknownst to me, you are taught that the sole purpose of using a comma is when you want to take a breath. That is true to a certain extent, but commas serve a purpose. They separate clauses. Okay, and what students tend to do, not just students, okay, native English speakers, adults, teachers, professionals, people working in the corporate world, people sending professional emails, publications, it's almost normal to comma splice, but doesn't make it right. Okay, if you are misplacing commas frequently throughout your whole piece, i.e., you cannot demonstrate that you can use a comma, it will affect your mark. Okay, let me give you a 60-second, maybe 2-minute lesson on how to use semicolons. So let's say, for example, this is something that examiners see an awful lot. Okay, naturally there is a pause between those two, what we call independent clauses, by the way. The trees loomed over the terrified boy, comma, he didn't know which way to run. Okay, there needs to be a pause. Okay, but we mustn't use commas in that way to separate two independent clauses. We put a full stop, we put a we put a semicolon, or we put a connective. If you comma splice like this, you separate two independent clauses and you're making a lot of these errors, it will affect your mark. So these are so closely linked. Let's show Cambridge. Let's be like, yes, look at me. I am here. I know how to use a semicolon. Cambridge loves semicolons. Not just Cambridge, every English exam board. Look at that. It's a beautiful piece of punctuation. The trees loomed over the terrified boy. He didn't know which way to run. Beautiful. Right. Let's talk about okay. Structural. Let's talk about, so I probably should have spoken about this a little bit earlier on. So I talked about narrative arc. Okay. Should you make any sort of sophisticated structural choices, in there being some sort of shift in timeline or anything like that, I would recommend, unless you watch my video on flashbacks and how to do it effectively, I would recommend doing a linear narrative. So having no flash forwards or flashbacks, okay? If you know how to use a flashback and you can do that successfully, you will be rewarded well for it. But I would recommend, I say to my students, just do a linear narrative, okay? Don't ever have any flashbacks to last year or a flash forward into the future. Don't do that, okay? You can get a top band just doing a linear narrative, okay? If you're going to make any sort of more sophisticated structural choices, i.e. doing a non-linear narrative which jumps about, make sure you are confident in making those choices. A good sort of way to signpost a flashback is for a character to be fixated on an object. It might be a photo. They might touch a belonging of someone that perhaps is no longer alive. I don't know. Watch my video. Okay, there's lots of different ways to include some more sophisticated structural choices. So I talked about vocabulary. I've talked about characters. I've talked about, let me just make a, keep your narratives credible. Yeah, going back to what I said before, I think sort of humor works quite well, okay? For the, plan. Okay, let's talk about a couple of things here. I've said, in case it's not clear, whatever topic you choose, make it credible, make it authentic, believable. Humor works quite well. In terms of the prompt that you go for, that's absolutely fine. Sometimes it's a title, sometimes it asks you to include a particular line. It depends on the prompt. Okay, you do the one that you feel most confident with. Okay, you can go over the word count. You plan, you write for the hour. Some of you, I would say, try and write at least 2 pages, 2.5 pages. Again, just to dispel that notion, more doesn't always equate to a better outcome. Okay, if you write to, remember, you do the directed writing, you're going to be tired. The more that you write, the more opportunities there are for you to make errors and for your story to lose that focus. Okay, plan. I can never write a response for my, the responses that I show my students. I have to do a quick plan. I do not know how students, when my students have done, a practice assessment, some of them start writing straight away. This is insane. This is crazy. You need to know your plan. You need to know, what route are you going to take? How on earth can you craft a narrative without planning? This is crazy. Crazy. You need to plan. Some questions you can maybe skip the plan. I don't know. I don't particularly plan that much for the summary question. I just highlight, but you need to plan. I would just plan. I would plan at the beginning and then I would put a line through it. Okay, that's all you need to do. Okay. Right, let's talk about absolutely. You can, I said before, write from personal experience, but you can embellish, you can use a bit of poetic license. That's fine. Right, let's address the elephant in the room. Where's the elephant? Let's address, is it a good idea to remember something you have written pre-exam tomorrow? Out of interest, okay? Don't worry, I'm not going to tell your teachers. Who is sort of going in with the mindset, or maybe you've got like a narrative that you've written, you kind of remembered it. Who is going to try and manipulate a narrative they've written already to suit the prompt? Give me a me in the chat box. I just wing it. Thought that's a good idea to have like a selection, because it depends on the prompt. Hell no, who could remember that? Right. So what Cambridge said, and again, I can give you my own personal experience having been an examiner. It's often quite clear, not always, it was often, let me past tense, it was often very clear when I was marking narratives for Cambridge, which students had pre-learned a narrative and had tried to sort of shoehorn in the line, or the title to fit their narrative, and it was kind of evident to me that it was an afterthought. Okay, so you need to be careful. I'm not saying don't do it. I know a few of my students have written narratives and they're going to hopefully make it work to whatever prompt is given. If you are going to do that, let's say for example they ask you to write a narrative and you need to include the line, "It was a big mistake." Okay. Don't just sort of start writing down your narrative and then think, "Oh my God, I've not included the line." Okay. Because you probably will get penalized a little bit for that. And Cambridge will sort of, they'll be able to see that you've sort of pre-learned a narrative pre-exam. It's not considered cheating or anything like that, but it was clear for me, and it's clear to examiners, those who learn a narrative. I'm not saying don't do it. I've recommended some of my students to do it. You won't get penalized. Okay, you won't get penalized, but stay focused. Okay, so I think that's everything about the narrative. Okay, right, let's talk about descriptive writing. Okay, I'm just gonna go get some more water. So in 1 minute, guys, if you need to get some water or anything, we're going to talk about descriptive writing. Okay. Oh, and another one. Vocabulary. If you're not the best with vocabulary, I would actually encourage you to learn a few wow words, some positive adjectives or verbs, positive verbs, dynamic verbs, some negative sort of adjectives or emotions, and try and just shoehorn them into your narratives. You just need a sprinkling, guys, of precise vocabulary choice. They do not need to be ambitious, but there needs to be a reason for why you are using them. Can you use a different verb to walk, for example, to convey the character's situation? Right, I forgot. I am going to read, and I appreciate, God, I'm just going to preface this, okay? I appreciate my taste is probably very different to your taste. So I'm going to I might need a noose after this. I'm going to read you a narrative that I think there is a video of this narrative on my YouTube channel. I think I wrote this during COVID time. It's the exam prompt. I think the title was cancelled, so apologies. Apologies if you've read this already, but you want your narrative to stand out, okay? Getting the title cancelled, okay, which has quite negative connotations. It often can send students down sort of one dark and gloomy path, okay? It's not Mr. Sprinkles. Read my Mr. Sprinkles story, okay? So I'm going to read you a narrative that I wrote. Again, there's a video maybe 2 years back on this video. And again, I appreciate you might not see the humor, but hopefully you can see the way that I've created these quite sort of engaging characters. I'm going to read it. Don't be too harsh. I'm not going to do the singing. So this was a past prompt. Let me just make sure. Can you see? Okay. So write a story titled Cancelled. Okay. Again, apologies. I've read this to my year 11s when they were in year 10. I stood gazing at my reflection in the vanity mirror one last time, marveling at the embodiment of perfection that stared back at me. Damn, it seemed like God had gone above and beyond to craft such a flawless specimen of a young man. I mean, who wouldn't want to look like me? All right, Romeo, pull yourself together. The opening show was just around the corner, and my goal was to leave an indelible mark on everyone's memory with my effortless razzle dazzle. My hair was perfectly coiffed and my makeup, well, flawless as expected. Brogues buffed to the nines, teeth paper white, 10 quick push ups for that extra pump effect. I was the star. With a few minutes to spare, I pulled up my chair and casually flipped through my school's newspaper, dull as dishwater. Oh, wait, a section about me? Only half a page? I scoffed, knowing that my face plastered on every page would undoubtedly grab the attention of the student body. Eagerly, I snatched a pair of scissors from my cluttered table and, with utmost precision, cut out the small advertisement for tonight's show. There we go. Sticking it up to my vanity mirror, I sealed it with a big, sloppy kiss. You are a star, a star, a hard knock on the door interrupted my self-admiration. I grumbled, taking a quick. Can you see me? Can you hear me? Vic is back. I resurfaced from the sunken double-decker bus. Guys, I wasn't even looking at my screen. Did you catch any of my story? Am I back? Am I back? It ended when he smooched the mirror. Thank you, Tort. Right. I'm going to. How many fingers? How many fingers am I holding up? Okay, we're good. Right. Let me try again, guys. He's smooching the mirror. So, right. I want to finish it. So, okay. So I sealed it with a big sloppy kiss. Apologies if you did hear me. So I sealed it with a big sloppy kiss. You are a star, star, A. A hard knock on the door interrupted my self admiration. I grumbled, taking a quick gulp of my tall caramel latte before prancing to my dressing room door. Romeo, the show is starting in 5 minutes. Can I quickly? I slammed the door in his face. This show was all about me, and I was the lead character. Of course, I knew what time I had to be on stage. I straightened my lapel and took one final cursory glance at the script. Warming up my vocal cords, I'm not going to do it, but I proceeded to give my angelic pipes one last warm up. I was almost ready. Tossing my play script aside, I grabbed my phone and took one final selfie. Stunning. I waited. Just one more minute, a few more seconds, one more millisecond. Where were my likes? A small bead of sweat trickled down my forehead. Never mind, there must have been a problem with Instagram. I gingerly slipped my phone into my pocket and headed to the door. After quickly admiring my reflection in the shiny brass handle, I pulled the handle down. Wait. What? Wait, huh? The handle wouldn't budge. I started pacing around my dressing room, desperately trying to think of a way out of this mess. I could hear the boisterous chatter from the audience, all of whom had come to see my debut as the heroic Jose. I stationed myself in front of my vanity mirror. The lights flickered on and off, mocking my dire situation. I let out a high pitched squeak. One of the bulbs had gone. Great. Yes, sir, don't worry. We have our understudy ready. What happened to Ro? He's gone home sick. He's terribly sick, sir. I leapt to the door, ears stuck to the paneling. Maybe my excessive perspiration was affecting my hearing. This show was all about me, and I was the lead character. Erratically, I darted around my dressing room, screaming, crying, and flailing my arms. It was useless. I felt a veil of misery envelop me. It was inescapable. Soon a sinking feeling filled the pit of my stomach, and for the first time ever, I had been reduced to a snivelling, solitary child. Wiping away the goop oozing from my nose, I crumbled to the floor and somberly curled into a tight ball as my smartphone slid out of my pocket. Good luck to Robbie. Hashtag the real heroic Jose. I launched my phone at the door and sobbed. The light bulbs flickered one last time before all but one gave up. Great. I woke up with a script stuck to my swollen cheek. Tiny shards of sunlight peeked through the blinds, making me hiss like a vampire. The door slowly opened and let out a faint creak. Clambering to my feet, I staggered out of the dressing room and into the hallway. Silence. Oh, Romeo, I'm so sorry you couldn't perform. I clenched my fist. Here's today's edition of the school pay. I snatched the paper out of his hand and watched the young boy waltz off into the distance. Idiot. No one reads this rubbish anyway. Stealing a glance at the school paper, a photo of Robbie as heroic Jose adorned the front page. Last minute cancellation sets Robbie up for stardom. You've got to be kidding me. I hope you were able to read/see that. That is just an example, guys, of how to do something a little bit more light-hearted, a little bit more humorous, rather than writing about death, blood, murder. Okay, that's just an example. Okay, and that certainly would be enough to achieve, top band response. Not just because I wrote it. It ticks all the boxes. Okay. Again, I appreciate it's not everyone's cup of tea. You might not get the humor, but a Cambridge examiner would. I promise you. Right. Let's quickly talk about Yes, you are. If you want to show like time has passed, or you're omitting some sort of action, asterisks in brackets, that's absolutely fine. Right. Let's talk about briefly, because I said I was going to 30 minutes. Descriptive writing. Let's do it. Descriptive writing. I'm going to try keep this nice, and just because I like things to kind of look the same. Right, descriptive writing. Do I think it's easier? Not necessarily. If you are going to, I think descriptive writing, or at least successful descriptive writing, it's all about vocabulary. It's all about using precise vocabulary choices to create these authentic images. If your vocabulary is naff, it's not very good, I would do the narrative, because there are other ways you can impress Cambridge, okay, through characterization, through setting, through dialogue. Descriptive writing, you create authentic images, you use imagery, or you create this realistic, evocative imagery through precise vocabulary choices, okay? If your vocab isn't good, maybe narrative is better, but that's up to you to decide. So, it's all about vocabulary. Let's just talk about imagery, okay? Imagery is such an umbrella term, and lots of things go under that umbrella, okay? When you're in primary school, certainly when you're in Key Stage 3, 7, 8, and 9, you're taught how to construct similes, metaphors, use personification, etc. You do not need, there's not this shopping list of things that you need to include, okay? Do not think, oh my goodness, I've not included a simile, I've not included a meta, I'm going to lose marks. Quite often, when students overthink these sort of stylistic choices, the similes end up sounding quite silly, okay? So underneath that imagery umbrella, yes, there are everything such as similes, metaphor, personification, onomatopoeia, auditory imagery, the list is endless. But under that umbrella is also vocabulary, sensory description. And again, it comes back to vocabulary, okay? Effective sensory descriptions, okay, rely on your vocabulary choices, okay? Imagery is important. Oh, varieties of focus. This is probably the most important, okay? If you're going to do the descriptive writing task, okay, this is probably the most important thing, in addition to accuracy, obviously. Whatever prompt it is, let's say, for example, the prompt is about a beach, an island, whatever. Cambridge want to see varieties of focus. If you just, every single paragraph, you just focus on these sort of idyllic scenes, you've got this sort of crystal clear water, pristine white sand, the sun's sort of inviting, there's no clouds, whatever. It's going to be one note, and it's going to be quite boring, okay? If it is an island, okay, start by describing this sort of picturesque island, and then there might be a sense of movement. This foreboding cloud might be sort of looming over these people sunbathing, and then suddenly the heavens open up, okay? And then that's a perfect opportunity for you to shift the focus. So you don't want this sort of one note throughout the whole thing. Cambridge love contrast. I'm going to put that. And sometimes actually the prompt, there's no escaping contrast, because it might say describe a market during the morning versus the evening. Okay, Cambridge love contrast, varieties of focus. Let's talk about the how to structure. I think it's very easy to go over the suggested word count for narrative writing, but I would probably encourage you, if you're doing the descriptive writing, to sort of stick within that sort of suggested word count. Let's talk about the structure that I use with my students, and I refer to it as the photograph method. So the photograph method consists of 5 paragraphs. In fact, I might have it somewhere so I don't have to type it. Let's put this down here. Put that in black. So this is the photograph method, okay? So you imagine you are taking a photo of different scenes, okay? So your first paragraph should be a wide angle shot. So you are describing things from afar. You might be describing the weather, you might be describing the buildings, whatever. Paragraph 2 is your first zoom in shot. Now you can be a little bit creative here. You can zoom into a specific detail. You can zoom in through the window of a building and describe a family. Again, there's a video that I did around, it might have been around Christmas time, where it's very sort of inspired by a Christmas carol. And this boy walks past these different windows, and I zoom into the window to show this sort of contrast in sort of how families are celebrating Christmas. And you've got this one family dynamic. They're sort of arguing, and then you've got this one family who are just eating happily, enjoying each other's company, etc. So you can actually zoom in through a window. Okay, so zoom in shot. Paragraph 3 is your second zoom in shot. So shift the focus to zoom into something else, and then you're going to have another zoom in shot. So there's 3 opportunities there to show Cambridge that I could focus on 3 different things. Okay. And then paragraph 5, Cambridge quite like your descriptive pieces to have this circular structure. So you return back to your first scene, your first wide angle shot, but maybe there's a different sort of aspect to it. Maybe the weather's changed. Maybe people are leaving like a music festival or leaving a shopping center, etc. So I think rather than writing loads and loads and loads, I would, for this anyway, stick to a 5 paragraph structure, the photograph method. So let me just explain the wide angle shot and the zoom out shot. So when I used to teach the coursework component a few years back, in place of paper 2, one student, for their wide angle shot, they were describing, I think, a little mix Blackpink concert. Not that that's relevant. They were describing a concert. Okay, so their wide angle shot was describing this, this huge stage, confetti going everywhere, people dancing, celebrating from afar. And their zoom out shot returns to the stage, the lights have all gone out, and everyone's dispersing, everyone's going home, and there's just rubbish and remnants of the evening strewn everywhere. Okay, so you're returning to that wide angle shot, but you're focusing on a different sort of aspect to it. So that is the structure that I would do, a 5 paragraph structure. Okay, what else obviously, again, sentence accuracy, guys, same as before. Accuracy. Try and make your spelling, punctuation, and grammar as accurate as possible. Okay. Variety of sentence types and lengths. You might, this is for both narrative and descriptive, you might want to do a paragraph that is 1 sentence, a sentence fragment. God, that was really breaking the rules of grammar. Who cares? If it's for effect, that's absolutely fine. You might want to have like a 1-line paragraph to offset the slightly longer paragraphs. That's also fine to make these sort of conscious choices, providing there's a reason behind them. Do we need to know about explicit and implicit? No, you do not. What are some other things for descriptive? In many ways, looking at this list, there is definitely. Let's look at the list for narrative writing. There's obviously, if we are treating this as a shopping list, and these are sort of your non-negotiables, and actually, guys, these are kind of non-negotiables. So, you need to tick these boxes. There is a little bit more to consider for narrative writing than there is for descriptive writing. Descriptive writing, whatever prompt, okay, show varieties of focus. Zoom in here, zoom in there, zoom into something out. 3 paragraphs, zooming into 3 different things, okay? I'm going to put this. Do not choose the object prompt. Okay, let's talk about these that have just coming to my brain. Sometimes, and I mentioned this earlier on, sometimes the prompts, one of them might be an object, okay? If it asks you to describe an object, a watch, an animal's not an object, but an object, animal, what's some other ones? Earlier in the video, one year it was describe a wardrobe, it was a watch another year. I would avoid those prompts unless you're a really skilled writer. Okay, I feel like there's potentially it's going to get quite repetitive. Okay, so I would choose a scene prompt. Describe this scene, a marketplace, a beach, whatever the prompts are. Okay, another big important one, guys. You can create a sense of movement. Do not. I need something to. Do not treat descriptive writing as a static image. You can have movement. Clouds can be moving. People can be moving. People can be talking. If it's a static image, it's going to affect your mark. If you want to use the first person pronoun I, do you know what? You use the first person pronoun I. That is absolutely okay. There are some you mustn't. It's a descriptive piece. You cannot use the first person. Who do you think you are? Of course you can. Of course you can. But use it sparingly. I understand why teachers and indeed students say do not use those pronouns, because sometimes they veer off into narrative territory. If your description becomes a narrative, it's going to affect your mark. So if using that I voice is somehow going to make your descriptive piece into a narrative, just don't use it. But you can use it. Don't worry. Don't freak out if you suddenly used that first person pronoun I. But sort of, I love, guys, forget about similes. Similes, most similes that I read, they're rubbish. I'm not going to name names. I wonder if she's watching. I love when personification is used well. I love it. I love it. Personify everything. There was something else I was going to say. Create a sense of movement. Oh. Nothing should really happen. In the same breath, something should happen. If like contradict myself. There shouldn't be a plot. There shouldn't be a plot. when there's the blurring of lines between narrative and descriptive piece, you're going to lose marks because it's not sort of fit for purpose. Okay, essentially you are describing a scene. You might describe interactions, you might describe chatter, but it shouldn't, you can describe characters. Don't do too much characterization. I would focus on, the scene, because again, if you're using characterization in a way that is creating these really believable characters, I fear that it's going to veer off into narrative territory. Okay, so I would focus on using sensory. Use your senses. Sensory imagery is key. I have a video on how to use more sophisticated punctuation. Please, actually, there's a playlist. I think there's 10 videos in that playlist, maybe 9 videos that are geared towards the composition section. Okay, so please watch those. They're all skills based. I think that's everything for descriptive writing, guys. I'm going to finish reading again, this is a description that I wrote about 2 years ago. Let's have a read. So this one was describe your first day at school. Some of you might, arguably, there are some aspects of narrative writing, but ultimately it's a description. Okay. But I've used the photograph method. It has this circular structure. Just take note of my wide angle shot, my zoom in shot, my zoom in shot number 2, my zoom in shot number 3, and my zoom out shot. Okay. So this was describe your first day at school. Varieties of focus. We don't want one node. I'm sure you can relate to some of this. Let me make sure you can see it. Again, apologies if you've seen this. It is on a very, very old video. It was opening time. The antiquated school served as a gateway to another realm, one that made me question my readiness. See, that's a little bit narrative, but that's fine. The jarringly painful bell rang, signaling the onset of my imminent reality. Young children darted from every direction towards the crimson-painted doors. Older students exchanged reluctant hugs and farewells before forming orderly lines. Teachers loomed over younger ones who appeared mouse-like in comparison, awaiting complete silence. Another cacophonous bell screech signaled the odious headmistress's daily appearance. The imposing arched door swung open, revealing the formidable figure. The Beast, as she was colloquially known. This is a little bit narrative here, but it's fine. Emitted barely audible grunting noises, occasionally spraying those closest with acrid saliva. Through grimy windows, exasperated staff could be seen haphazardly preparing for the day. The Beast ushered people in. It was time to enter the unknown. So I've done the first stop, the second stop. These are structural choices. Zoom in paragraphs. Let's look at the first lesson. The first stop beckoned, and as I peered through the window, adorned with numerous images of famous scientists, an air of excitement became palpable. Small groups of students eagerly seized their pristine white lab coats, ready to don the guise of budding scientists. In no time, students excitedly retrieved their equipment and began scribbling down lengthy equations. Suddenly, a thunderous bang resonated from within, shrouding the students in a blanket of smoke. An eruption of laughter followed, accompanied by ecstatic clapping. An array of test tubes meticulously lined the desks, each filled with different fluorescent liquid, truly mesmerizing. Gradually, delicate bubbles started to form, accompanied by faint pops and hisses. It was time to move on. The second stop showcased a well-polished guitar proudly hanging on an adjacent brick wall. Carefully crafted paper planes sailed across the class, eliciting muffled and mischievous giggles. Some students danced on tables, whilst others slammed chubby fingers down on the keyboards. Tucked away on a giant magenta beanbag, a carefree student sprawled out, occasionally fist pump in the air in unison with another, strumming an out-of-tune guitar. This was me, by the way. The DJ button on one of the keyboards was mistakenly pressed, resulting in uncontrollable laughter. The teacher returned and the students scattered. It was time to move on. The third and last stop featured laminated mathematical equations proudly displayed around a garishly painted window frame. Unsettling silence filled the classroom as a seemingly eccentric teacher scanned the room, taking big gulps of her piping hot coffee. Donning bright purple spectacles perched precariously on the tip of her nose, she darted in and out of perfectly formed rows of desks. Lone students penned answers to perplexing mathematical riddles scrawled across the whiteboard, whilst others looked on in awe or wished for the ground to swallow them whole. Tapping the dainty bell on her perfectly organized desk signaled the end of the lesson. The teacher hastily wrote the answer to the convoluted riddle, and a room of sighs followed. It was time to go home. Circular structure. Standing outside the antiquated school once again, the school bell made its final farewell with a deafening ring. Doors violently flung open, and a never-ending stream of students triumphantly charged out. Worn-out teachers with gritted teeth attempted to force out a goodbye to the students before dragging their weary feet back into school. The formidable beast ushered the last stragglers out as if on a mission to lock the school swiftly. The sea of students vanished, and the last of the oldest students made a desperate run for the ramshackle school bus. The beast let out one final grunt and put on the padlock. Closing time. That is my description. Obviously, very different to the narrative. Ron put, can you write damn in the... If you were here for when I read out my narrative, he's a very conceited, unpleasant protagonist, main character. So he uses damn in a, damn, don't I look fine? Look at my reflection in the mirror. Mika, oh, I'm signing off very, very soon. The last thing that I will say is tense. Let me just write. This is more, well, it's to do with both, really. Let's hear. Oh. So, tense is really, really important, okay? If you want to write in past tense, you absolutely write in past tense. I love narratives that are written in present tense, but are done so in an effective way, and that all their verbs, their auxiliary verbs, everything are matching. I love, it creates a sense of immediacy. Okay, do not change between the two, because invariably you will slip up somewhere. If you want to lose easy marks, style and accuracy, making tense errors for sure, I would stick to past tense, guys. Right. It is 9:20. I need to eat, guys. I'm going to sign off. If you've only just joined, this is a 2-hour, 15-minute video. So maybe you can pick and choose what parts you want to watch. Best of luck, guys, tomorrow. I appreciate and empathize directed writing composition. It's a difficult paper. Do not underestimate directed writing. It's difficult. Thank you. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I'm going to eat. I've got my fingers crossed for you. If you've got any questions, leave the go watch my directed writing video. Okay, my most recent one. Okay. Best of luck, guys. I'm sure you are absolutely going to smash it. Have a good night, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. And I promise you, I am championing you all the way until the very end.